Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers McKay.
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we're part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to one focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy, we are running out of time already-worthy podcast. Today is Thursday, the 28th of January, 2021. Good morning, Kristy. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you talk just a little faster, though? I'm falling asleep.
So Kristy, Amelia, and I had like a super extensive check-in this morning without recording because some of the things we said were totally not podcast appropriate. But nonetheless, we sort of forgot we had this job to do before we have to go to our editorial meeting. And so we're going to just like really, really quickly talk about the things on the Optimist Daily that made us fiery today.
Yeah. So there's a number of things. And honestly, this is going to be hard to do in the 12 minutes we're giving ourselves because there's, to me, 3 incredibly important stories today in the headlines in the top 10. The first one is the headline. Finally, Illinois becomes the first state to end the cash bail system. And this is something that we've talked about somewhat in the past on the podcast. We've written about it on the Optimist Daily. This idea of ending cash bail for pretrial incarceration, because this is something which is really, really challenging for people who are economically on the bottom end of the economic scale. So it's a huge win for racial justice, but it's also a huge win for economic justice, whether, whatever racial category a person might fit into. But because of the fact that more Black, Latino, and Indigenous people who are detained in pretrial, they end up having to stay in prison, in jail, at far higher rates than people of other ethnicities. That's why this is mainly being touted as a racial justice issue. But it's really an onerous challenge for folks who don't have a lot of assets to get out of jail prior to being proven guilty. We're considered innocent until proven guilty, but oftentimes that's not how it works within the cash bail system. So this is why this is, to me, a major solution, a major acknowledgement. New Jersey has drastically limited the use of cash bail. California nearly ended the practice last year through a statewide referendum, but that failed, although Los Angeles is now working on ending cash bail in LA County because of the new attorney general there. But Illinois is the first state to do away with this, and it still needs to be signed by the governor, but J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, is planning to sign it, apparently. So once that's done, this is going to be a really interesting experiment to see how removing pretrial cash bail requirements can help.
Yeah, we've talked about this, and sorry to cut you off, but I think what the framing on this conversation so often is about like, oh, this battle between letting criminals get away and blah, blah, blah. And it's just the inflammatory discussion that frames cash bail is just hogwash, right? It's absolute hogwash. And I am so delighted that the Optimist Daily continues to disabuse people of the notion that this is anything but an economic decision to level the playing field and ensure that we don't have increased incidences of strife and crime because of a bail system. I get very passionate about this one because no cash bail, it is not for repeat offenders. It is instead true to the nature of our Constitution, which is innocent till proven guilty. And it is not inflicting guilt and all of the shame that is associated with guilt prior to a trial.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out. It's not about letting people who have been arrested for horrible crimes like rape or murder. This also doesn't let people out if they've been accused of domestic violence necessarily. But if you're arrested for a misdemeanor, like you're crossing the street wrong or you write a bad check because you're desperate and you end up having to spend a month in jail, because you can't pay the $50,000 to get yourself out. You're already on the bottom. It's like Les Miserables. You stole a loaf of bread to feed your children, and then you end up spending the rest of your life in jail. without even having a trial. So that's
Right.
why I think this is
Right.
a really important issue for racial justice, for economic justice. And I'm glad to see that it's coming. Another story, which is also super interesting and I feel like a solution. The headline is about Harriet Tubman, who will soon replace Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. And Black History Month is coming up next week. This is something that's been in the works for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's finally probably going to happen. And this will be the first woman and the first person of color to take a place of honor on one of our bills of currency.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about time.
It is definitely about time. And, this is one of those oddly polarizing conversations. And at the Optimist Daily, we try so hard to stay away from polarity and instead focus on solutions. But the simple fact is that Andrew Jackson, as a figurehead, was, a slave owner and a proponent of ethnic cleansing. And the simple fact is that there's no need for him to continue to take a place on a $20 bill. Instead, a woman like Harriet Tubman, who was monumental in the lives of a generation of people and generations to come as someone who has inspired all of us, she takes her place on the $20 bill. I cannot wait to get one. I know it will stay framed behind my desk because that's something we can all look to and say, well done. And well done to finally fix and right this particular wrong with Andrew Jackson even being on money, and then also to step into a new chapter for our country.
Well, it's symbolic, right? And replacing Jackson on the bill doesn't discount his presidency or erase the history. And in the time, he was considered a hero, partly because of his white supremacist ideology, because that was where it was. But we are in a different era.
Yeah.
And so that symbolism is profound. And I feel like it is important and it is time. And this honors a figure who fought against systems of oppression and sought justice. And it is the first time an activist is taking a place of honor on a piece of our U.S. currency.
Yeah.
So I think it's tremendously symbolic. And it shows that we're trying to heal some of the original sins of our country.
Exactly.
In a positive way. So that's why I liked this one.
Okay, so there's one more that I'll hit on super quick. There's tons of great stories, but the U.S. government commits to transitioning all federal vehicles to EV models. This was a phenomenal story that we saw that basically the goal of the U.S. government is to transition to green energy, create 1 million new jobs in the auto industry, and elevate EV vehicles to the primary use in the fleet.
And I mean, this is super important because electric vehicles are actually far cheaper to own, over their lifetime.
Exactly. Once again, an economic solution that changes the world for good, which I feel like we're coming up with a theme here. But the idea on this one, and the fact is the supply chain is not necessarily prepared for this initiative, right? U.S. companies, whether it's Tesla or GM or Ford, they're going to have to step up to fill this need. But what this does is it creates a race to opportunity, right? So these companies are now going to look at this commitment, look at these government contracts, and they're going to figure it out. And simultaneously, when figuring it out, they are also going to solve some of the supply chain issues and some of the other concerns with EV vehicles. So I guess EV vehicles is redundant. With EV options.
Vehicles. I want to also call out Rivian, which is an American truck maker who's been focused on electric trucks and electric vans. Like UPS is already going in this direction. Amazon is already going in this direction for fleet vehicles. It makes so much sense on an economic basis. And that's why for the US to also signal it's very symbolic again, but also practical.
Exactly. All right, that's all we got, guys. We are out of time. We have to go to the editorial meeting. There are so many other solutions on the Optimist Daily today that I love. Kristy, thanks for being here. Everybody, thank you for listening. We promise we will continue to send you solution-based positive stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for the good.
And please consider becoming an emissary if you're not already on the optimistdaily.com. And for starting at just $5 a month, you can help support reader-funded independent journalism and help us keep the Optimist Daily free for everyone who needs it, supported by those of us who can. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, and then we'll end the week.
Yeah, and in theory, we'll be better planned tomorrow. Spend some time. And I think I've had too many cups of coffee today already.
Slow it down, Summers. Deep breaths.
All right. Bye, guys.